The Sd.Kfz 250 or Special Motor Vehicle 250 was a lightly armored half-track. Most variants were open-topped and had a single access door in the rear. The Sd.Kfz 250 was adopted in 1939 to supplement the larger standard half-tracks. Production delays meant that the first vehicle did not appear until the middle of 1941. Production of this early version stopped in October 1943 with some 4,200 built. The level of protection was minimal. Only rifle-caliber small arms fire and shell fragments would likely be stopped, but heavy machine guns, anti-tank rifles, and virtually any form of artillery could perforate the vehicle even at long range. The Sd.Kfz 250 was used in a wide variety of roles throughout World War II. The basic troop carrier version was used as an armored personnel carrier for reconnaissance units, carrying scout sections. This basic variant usually mounted 1 or 2 MG-34 machine guns. Later variants carried 20mm, 37mm, and even 75mm guns to support the more lightly armed versions. Several special-purpose variants were seen early in the war. The 250/3 was a command variant, with fewer seats but equipped with long-range radio equipment. These were used by battalion and higher commanders as personal command vehicles, most famously the 253 used by Erwin Rommel in the North African campaign. Early versions had large, bed-frame antennas, which were easy to spot at long range, making them more vulnerable to artillery fire. Later variants dispensed with this and instead used the far less. The vehicles was one of the main assets of the reconnaissance battalions of the German panzer divisions. In the wartime German army, reconnaissance was a sophisticated and complex undertaking, and the reconnaissance battalion was a key component of all divisions. This was especially so for the mechanized mobile divisions, and their reconnaissance battalions were not merely scout units. The tactical doctrine governing the employment of the reconnaissance battalion was that it should fight for information. Locating the enemy was only a first step. The reconnaissance battalion was then expected to develop the situation by forcing the enemy to deploy, revealing his strength and intentions. This was done by simulating a full-scale attack, both to acquire and report information, and to buy time. Thus the reconnaissance battalion had to have sufficient strength and firepower to make its attack appear plausible, and reliable means of communication with the division headquarters. These considerations governed its original organization and its evolution from 1939 to 1945. Unlike the US and British armies, the German army never equipped its motorized reconnaissance battalions with light tanks. Instead, the Sd.Kfz 250 light armored half-track was modified by the addition of a turret identical to that of the Sd.Kfz 222 armored car, mounting a 20mm cannon and a coaxial machine gun. These vehicles equipped the new armored car and armored reconnaissance companies created in late 1942. There were never enough of them, however, completely to replace wheeled armored cars. Nonetheless, the 1942 armored reconnaissance battalions were considerably larger and more heavily armed than its predecessor. The motorcycle infantry company was deleted and replaced by 2 armored reconnaissance companies with 3 rifle platoons and a heavy weapons platoon, all carried in Sd.Kfz 250 half-tracks. There were 2 armored car companies, 1 wheeled and 1 half-track. The Armored Heavy Company had the larger armored half-track for its self-propelled and towed infantry and anti-tank gun companies. The battalion headquarters included a platoon with 6 heavy armored cars, armed with infantry guns. But thanks to equipment shortages, there were many variations from this desired standard. Only the 1st Panzer Division had the full armored reconnaissance battalion as depicted below. Some battalions had only 1 armored reconnaissance company, sometimes supplemented by a motorcycle infantry company or a light motorized company with Volkswagen field cars. In many battalions, the heavy company was motorized, equipped with trucks instead of half-tracks. The reconnaissance battalion of the 13th Panzer Division, for example, had 1 armored car company, 1 armored reconnaissance company, 2 light motorized reconnaissance companies and a motorized heavy company. In late 1944, the Standard Armored Reconnaissance Battalion had one wheeled and one half-track armored car company, one armored reconnaissance company and an armored heavy company. Once again, however, equipment shortages dictated many deviations from the authorized organization. And even when it could be achieved, combat losses quickly reduced the battalion's strength. In addition to its primary role, the Armored Reconnaissance Battalion was frequently employed as a mobile reserve force, particularly when its parent division was on the defensive. When so tasked, it was usually organized as a battle group with additional units attached, e.g. a tank company or an assault gun battery. This practice of cross-attaching divisional subunits to create task forces for specific mission was a standard practice of the German army. In the post-war period, most major armies adopted and elaborated upon the wartime German reconnaissance unit model. The U.S. Army, for example, evolved the Armored Cavalry Regiment, in effect a mechanized brigade with its own tank, artillery and helicopter support. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and to make sure you don't miss my future work, please make sure you are subscribed to my channel and press the bell notification button. Thank you and see you in the next video.